What are the differences between the RTX 3050 and RTX 3050 Ti laptop GPUs? In this video, we are going to take a look at the technological differences, as well as gaming performance and benchmark results. The RTX 3050 that Nvidia released in May 2021 replaces the GTX 1650 Ti in the product roadmap, while the RTX 3050 Ti is the successor to the GTX 1660 Ti. With the May release of the RTX 3050 series graphics, Nvidia has now a complete range of ray tracing GPUs, ranging from entry to high-end. The 30 series Ampere architecture incorporates technologies such as Dynamic Boost 2.0, Whisper Mode, Resizable Bar, as well as DLSS and ray tracing features. It also comes with the third generation of Max-Q technologies that optimizes the laptop's hardware for peak power and performance. Artificial intelligence is used to dynamically balance compute resource for optimum operation. For the user, this translates into better battery life, better acoustics, and thinner, lighter laptops. The 3050 and 3050 Ti both support second-generation ray tracing cores and third-generation tensor cores. Both cards includes 4 GB GDDR6 VRAM and has a 128-bit memory bandwidth. The differences comes in the number of CUDA cores and clock frequencies. The 3050 Ti has 25% more accelerated CUDA cores than the 3050, making it more power efficient than its cheaper sibling. Let's take a look at raw gaming performance. For this test, I am using two identical laptop systems for a true apples-to-apples comparison. Both laptops have a 5000 series AMD processor, the R7-5800H, 32 GB RAM in dual-channel configuration, 1 TB of SSD, and a 300 Hz LCD panel. As both laptops share the same chassis, which in this case is the Asus ROG Strix G17, the thermal modules are also identical. The only variable in this comparison will be the graphics. I tested all games at 1080p with VSync disabled. The graphics settings are dialed to maximum settings, usually ultra, whenever this was possible for the GPU to handle. If you tune down the graphics settings to either high or medium, all results you see in this test will be improved. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was tested with the game's built-in benchmark software at 1080p and ultra settings. The 3050 scored 38 frames per second, while the 3050 Ti managed 41 frames per second on average. This translates into a near 8% increase in average FPS. Batman Arkham Knight is an older title from 2015. The PC version of this game is typically locked at 30 frames per second while you are playing the game. However, with the PC performance test inside the game, it is possible to go beyond the locked frame rate. The 3050 received an overall benchmark score of 62 frames per second, while the 3050 Ti scored 65 frames per second. A 5% gain in this case over the 3050. Deus Ex: Mankind Divided also has a built-in benchmark tool. In this title, the 3050 scored 63 frames per second and 73 frames per second for the Ti version. This is the biggest percentual difference so far at 16%. F1 2018 is a fabulous racing game developed by Codemasters. The 3050 scored 99 frames per second in the benchmark at ultra settings, and 3050 Ti scored 109 frames per second. A solid 10% gain for the latter. Far Cry 5 scored 81 frames per second with the 3050 and 86 frames per second with the Ti version. A 6% difference in this case at 1080p Ultra. Forza Horizon 4 was tested with the dynamic optimizations off and all graphics settings maxed out. The RTX 3050 scored 52 frames per second and 54 frames per second for the 3050 Ti. A mere 4% difference in this case. Horizon Zero Dawn was tested with the game's built-in benchmark tool. At 1080p highest settings, 3050 pulled 52 frames per second while 3050 Ti scored 57 frames per second, a near 10% gain. Red Dead Redemption 2 was tested with the built-in benchmark. This game has lots of different settings, so results will typically vary depending on your settings. Here I tried to maximize the settings to hit the video RAM ceiling. The RTX 3050 Ti performs roughly 10% more compared to the standard edition. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was tested using ultra settings. The RTX 3050 scored a solid 62 frames per second on average with the game's built-in benchmark. RTX 3050 Ti received 66 frames per second using the same settings. This represents a 6% difference. Total War: Three Kingdoms was tested at ultra settings. RTX 3050 scored 44 frames per second. The RTX 3050 Ti managed to pull 5 more FPS, which translates into 11% gain. These are all the games that was tested with the native benchmark app. I also ran some tests using actual gameplay to see how this translates into real-world experience. If you're interested in the frame numbers, click on the card above to see my other videos where I tested the RTX 30 series in 23 games. From here, I will just state the relative difference between the two cards as measured in ultra settings at 1080p. As expected, the difference between the two cards is not huge for most games, even though there are a few exceptions. In Anno 1800, the difference stayed within single digit when tested at ultra settings at 1080p resolution. Around 8%. Apex Legends was tested using highest settings in the practice range. Depending on the scene, the game can be seen as 10 to 15% in favor of the RTX 3050 Ti. Control is perhaps the best game to illustrate the ray tracing technology. With ray tracing turned off, the relative gain for the 3050 Ti is between 6 to 10%. Why DLSS and ray tracing presets enabled to high? The difference remains around 6% for dynamic sceneries and around 10% for static scenes. CyberPunk 2077 is a massive game and requires a fast system to run it well. The difference between the RTX 3050 and 3050 Ti is around 6% when tested in ultra settings with DLSS enabled and ray tracing off. With both DLSS and ray tracing ultra enabled, the difference becomes slightly bigger. Fortnite was tested by running through the same area in online battle royale. Here, the 3050 Ti was roughly 6 to 7% ahead of the 3050. GTA 5 is a classic benchmark that is often used by reviewers. When all settings are turned up, it almost maximizes the 4 GB video RAM of the 3050 laptop GPU. The Ti version performs between 5 to 7% faster than the standard 3050. Hitman 3 was very similar to GTA 5, with the Ti version somewhere around 7 to 8% faster than the 3050. Metro Last Light was tested with the built-in benchmark at ultra settings. The average gain for the 3050 Ti was around 10%. Spellbreak is like any other esports game. You are easily able to hit more than 100 frames per second with either 3050 or the RTX 3050 Ti. The difference is close to 10% between the two. The difference in Warzone is quite negligible. somewhere between 5 to 7% at most. Click the card above to see more detailed tests in this game. In summary, the average difference between the RTX 3050 and RTX 3050 Ti is around 9% across all games tested. The price difference would likely vary in different countries, so whether the performance difference is worth the price premium is up to you to decide. I hope this video provided some useful insight to aid you in your purchase decision. If you want to see comparisons between the RTX 30 series versus the 1660 Ti or the GTX 1650 series, let me know in the comments. Check out the links in the video descriptions to see the benchmark videos of the RTX 3050 series. It took me a lot of time preparing and making this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed the content and what you have learned. A sub to the channel would be massively appreciated as well. Feel free to share my video on any social platform. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments.